typically start these podcast episodes just by talking about like origin story. And what is so beneficial about it is this business is the opposite of linear. But even knowing that, there's been a lot of times on this journey where I felt like I'm not where I should be. If so-and-so hit this mark at this point, shouldn't I be? So just by being exposed to all these different origin stories, I think it really does allow people to give themselves a lot of forgiveness for being where they are and understanding that there is no one right path. So they're not on the wrong path. They haven't missed any milestones because there are no typical milestones. So you came here to LA at 18 for college, right?
I did. And I had done theater before that. Not professional theater, but I grew up in Phoenix, Arizona, and I did high school theater and community theater. That's just what was available to me. I did not come from a family that was in this industry in any way and didn't have any foothold in this business. But one of the plays I did in Phoenix was directed by someone who was from LA and was an actor, and he had gone to the academy and he recommended it to me. So that's the only program I applied to.
Wow.
I didn't know. I didn't know about Juilliard. I'm sure I knew of Juilliard like as a contract. I didn't know about Yale or so that was the only school I was aware of, and I auditioned and was so grateful to get in, and so I moved out to go there.
Yeah. So that was pre-internet or pre. No. We had internet, but we didn't have.
This was 2001. I remember looking at the pamphlet for the academy, and I think they say it's the oldest acting institution in the English-speaking world. I think that's the quote. I'm not sure if that's the quote or if it's true. I don't know. But the alumni list is so amazing. You know, it's everyone from Robert Redford to Danny DeVito to Carrie-Anne Moss, and I just was like, of course I want to go there. So thrilled to get to go. It's a 2-year program, and I loved it. Every class was singing, dancing, dialects, classical theater, contemporary comedy. I mean, it was a real mix, and I really enjoyed it.
That's amazing. Was that when the academy was in Pasadena or here on La Brea?
Here. So to this day, kind of can't believe my parents let me do this. It's on La Brea, just south of Sunset. So I moved to the heart of Hollywood. My first apartment was on Hollywood Boulevard. And I had just turned 18. And I'm a mom now, and I was just with my mom a couple days ago, and I was just saying, like, I cannot believe you got in the car and drove away, and like drove up Hollywood Boulevard, pre-Hollywood and Highland, so like as sketchy as could be, and just had to leave your daughter there and trust that everything was gonna be okay. I'm so grateful. I was a nerd, so I don't think there was much risk that I was gonna go off the rails, right? But still, that's such a scary city to leave your kid in. I'm really grateful that they let me do that and helped me do it.
And that you lived to tell the tale.
Yes. Barely, yeah.
So I look back at the stuff I did when I first moved to LA, and I'm like, whoa. I mean, I worked at Geisha House on Hollywood Boulevard, and I lived at Franklin and Highland, and like walked on Hollywood Boulevard to get to my like waitressing job, and would walk home at like 2 a.m. And I'm just like,
same. Crazy. You're like, I can't believe I'm alive.
Oh my God, totally. Yeah, absolutely. Also, I didn't know you went to the academy. That's amazing. My dearest friend went to the academy as well.
Oh, really?
Yeah, absolutely. And he talks about, seeing the alumni list as well. And it's like, my God, you're in such fantastic company.
I loved it. It was a great program. I was really happy to be there. And I think like a lot of programs, though, when I got out, I didn't really know what to do. I felt like I had good training, and I really needed somewhere like Stan Kirsch, and it did take me a couple more years to find it. But you're just living inside of these Chekhov plays. And as someone who did want to work in film and television, that was a tough transition. There was a lot to learn. There was still a lot to learn coming out of a program like that.
Yeah, I feel exactly the same way.
Do you?
I had like my classical monologue, I had my contemporary monologue. I was like, I have something from Love's Labour's Lost. I also have Moliere. And then I have from Of Mice and Men, and they were like, well, what shows can you be on? And I was like,
what do you mean? Anything. I'm very versatile.
Yes. I'm trained. I can do voices. So being in LA, did that training program talk at all about branding? So
they did actually. In my memory, which is not great. So if any Academy alums hear this and this is wrong, please comment and say what's correct. Also, this could be outdated too, because this was a while ago.
Sure.
At the time, in the second year, I think in the second semester, we had some acting professionally classes. So we took like a commercial class that had a little bit of improv. There was something like acting professionally where we did talk about branding in terms of character types, which later I would get to a place where I had an idea around, so I'm sure it wasn't my idea, I'm sure it was someone else's, but I came to see branding more as the kind of project I wanted to be on, not so much the kind of characters I wanted to play. And that version of it that we did in school that I think was really common at the time, there were a lot of places in LA that were teaching that kind of branding, probably still do, because on some people I think that's really clear and specific and probably very useful. I think as a young theater student though, I just didn't want to hear it.
Yeah.
I didn't want to be told this is the thing that you're going to do. But I do think it was a part of the curriculum. Like someone at least told us, you look like this, you sound like this is the kind of role you might play. We didn't leave though at that time with materials. And I stayed very close with the school for a long time. I think now most of the people I knew there are gone. But that was something I did talk to them about in future years, was like, I think people should leave with headshots and a demo reel and a solid resume and a plan of what to do next, because nobody is waiting for you and your theater degree. When you get to the other side of that stage, nobody is standing there excited to hire you.
That is so real.
Yeah. Unfortunately.
Yeah, absolutely. So the type of branding that they were sort of talking about, was it sort of like you're the prom queen versus you're like...
I think it was more like that.
Yeah.
Who was very intimidating anyway. Was a strong personality, saying to me, if you could just embrace the fact that you look like a bitch, it would be really good for you. And I was like, I didn't, I'm not a bitch. So I was just like, and I understand in hindsight what he was saying is like, I think I have a sharp nose and a sharp chin. And if I'm not talking, I am very much have bitchy resting face. So I think I understand what he was saying, but like, that's not my personality at all. And I hadn't been cast in any roles like that to that point either. So it was a really shocking thing to have someone say to me, and I was young, so I took it personally too. But I remember that being said, so I feel like that had to be the kind of class it was. Sort of like, these are the things that you might be seen as.
One of the things I find a little dangerous about that, in my experience, is that it's coming from that teacher or that coach's worldview. I am honest with my students about this. One of my students was a model. She was a Victoria's Secret angel. She wasn't aspiring. She was doing okay. Yeah, and she brought in a role for the girl next door. And I was like, she's not the girl next door. She's this. Yeah. And what I was really saying is, where do I belong if she's the girl next door?
Yeah.
So if I had told her, no, you're not the girl next door, that would be coming just from a place of my own ego and my need to feel like I belong in this industry, and not at all a reflection of her.
Yeah.
Because when she takes those wings off and would show up with no makeup, she was the girl next door in someone's project. So I think it's a little dangerous in that way, which is why I always work really hard to have a good sense of I belong and I'm okay just as I am, so that I don't pass on any bullshit or wounded ego to my students, who will then take it personally and have that sort of follow them.
Well, that's very thoughtful of you and amazing. I mean, I think those are the kind of teachers that we need all the time, but especially when we're young. He was a great teacher. Otherwise, we got along really well. And I do think he was saying something that he thought was helpful.
Totally.
But it totally, like, I was not ready to hear something like that.
Absolutely.
And I wonder if, no matter what he had said, I have a feeling I would have rejected it a bit, because here we were going through this program where we were playing, this vast array of characters, and I don't know that anybody, or I'll just speak for myself, I probably just didn't want to feel limited coming out of that. I wanted to feel like, but I want to stretch and grow. And so I do think it was coming from a place of trying to help, but I was not.
Oh, yeah. It sounds like he was trying very much to be like, this will make your life easier.
Yeah.
This will do easier.
I think that was the purpose behind it, but I don't know if I've ever played a bitch, actually. I have to think pretty hard about it. I'm not, I would be fun and I would love to, but I don't actually think I have.
Give it to me.
Yeah. You're like 20 some years later, still hasn't.
Yeah, I know. Or maybe that's exactly what I should have been doing
the whole time.
Everything would have been different if I just followed that piece.
Damn. So you came here at 18, 2 years later the program ends. How do you sort of get started moving into the professional world?
I did a quick Shakespeare program in England because I just had heard about this program that I really wanted to do. So I went and did that, and then I came back, and I was really lucky that a job when I was going through college, I was waiting tables, and I worked with someone who was an assistant at an agency, and he was like, let me come in and I'll teach you how to like audition for commercials, because he was working in the commercial department. And I was like, yes, please, because I don't know how to do that at all. And of course, that's sort of the first thing I think when you're coming out of school is commercials. And I went in, he started to give me a class, and then he brought this woman in and she gave me some notes, and then she ended up being the owner of the agency. And she's like, we're going to sign you. And so I had an agent coming out of school, which was wonderful. That was just a total stroke of luck.
Yeah.
And by the time I finished school, they had a theatrical department as well, and I had a theatrical agent. So that was really
lovely,
really huge, because we didn't, at that stage of the program, there's no showcase. That's if you do the third year company, then that's considered the showcase. But I think in the second year there wasn't. So I did have that team. And so I got to audition for commercials, largely music videos, co-stars. I booked a couple of jobs a year, enough to feel like, okay, I'm getting some yeses, I'm making some money, not enough to quit my day job though. I always had a day job. And I did do like a music video or two. I did do a couple of commercials, and then started getting those co-stars in like procedurals and the shows that have a lot of those roles that are witnesses to something, or the victim. I did a lot of crying and dying.
Crying and dying, baby.
Lots of that, covered in blood. Somewhere in there, I took a weird little jog and went to Singapore for a year. I was working for Universal Studios. We opened a new park over there.
Wow.
And that was a very intense experience. I ended up writing and directing shows, and I was 26, I think, and it was an incredibly intense job. Up to that point, I had always been like directing plays and really self-starting projects, and thought in my head, I'm going to be Tina Fey, I'm going to run a show one day. Then I had that experience of having a lot of employees, and I struggled a lot. The people pleaser side of me, the type A side of me, it was a really difficult year for me. And so then I came back from that going, okay, I think actually I kind of want to stay in my lane a little bit and be an actor, and started doing more comedy at that time. I was doing improv just for fun. I was always in a class, always trying to learn more. I ended up in improv, and I loved it.
I have.
You have?
Not a lot. No, not a lot, but I have.
What I loved so much about it was like all this stuff from conservatory training that I didn't get to use in any way, because no one's going to cast me as a fencer. No one cares about my grandma voice that I perfected in my second year. All these things I never got to use, I could suddenly use in improv, because you never know. You didn't know what was going to be thrown at you. You didn't know who you were going to play that night. And so it was like, getting to put on this old skill set that I loved, and it was so fun. And I started to get a little more specific. I was saying not branding in terms of a character, but I got really clear about, I want to be on an ensemble comedy. This is what I want. I had guest starred enough on enough different kinds of things that the day-to-day of that I thought was so fun. I just thought, you can go to work every day and be there in service of the funniest joke and laugh all day, and then go home and still have something left for yourself. Like, that's amazing, because I'd been doing, all the dramatic stuff.
Crying and dying.
And just not having anything left at the end. And so that specificity ended up being really helpful in so many ways. The choices that you make as an actor, who you shoot your headshots with, which classes you take. I'm going to guess that's around the time that I came to Stan Kirsch. It's just a guess. I would imagine that's probably why I initially came here. And it all started to snowball. That's when I started to work consistently. And it was like reps that made sense with that vision. And for them, even, I imagine from their perspective, it's like, rather than me coming in the door for a rep meeting and just saying I want to work, me coming in saying I want to be on an ensemble comedy, and I'm doing a lot of improv and sketch, and it was, I think, probably a lot easier for them to pick up the phone and say, you need to meet these casting directors. And then it was like kind of one job led to the next.
What I'm hearing in that I think is so essential is, not only did you sort of have the vision and express that vision, but you were like, I have headshots that back it up, I have training that backs it up, I'm constantly doing this. That is sort of putting myself in the line for this. Yeah.
It was helpful. I feel like you're probably like me in that if you're the kind of actor that runs a little type A, like,
how dare you?
What can I? Sorry, I'm sorry. I hope that's not offensive. Good company. You feel very on the outside, and you're like, what can I do? And there's this feeling that you can and should be doing everything you can to push that boulder up the mountain. And so there are hundreds of classes and photographers, and there's so much that you can choose from. So I think for me, actually, the specificity of it, the simplicity of, if it doesn't serve this goal right now, I'm going to say no to it. I'm not going to do it. I'm just going to do that. This doesn't mean that's it forever. It's just for right now, this is what I'm working toward. It was actually a big relief.
Yeah.
And I think it was helpful for me, and I imagine really helpful for my reps too.
That's amazing. So you eventually moved on from the initial reps that you had, the initial agent that you had?
Yes, I did. I was doing a lot of improv. At the time, I had signed with 3 Arts, which is a great comedic management company. And, oh, you know what? I'm actually not sure which came first now that I say it. Through doing improv, I was seen by an agent who was a wonderful comedy agent, and then seen by 2 managers at 3 Arts who were wonderful comedy managers. So I don't think I had a manager, so I didn't leave anybody to be with them at the time that I switched to the comedy. I had been with my agent for quite a long time. He was also ready to take a break. So it was good, it was good
that's
timing.
Great.
And I wouldn't at all be where I am without him and everything he did for those early years too.
Absolutely.
So I'm really grateful for that, and we're still in touch. Now I'm with a different round of agents and managers, largely just as things shift and change. People move to different companies.
Did you seek them out to come to the comedy show?
No. I remember the agent, whose name is Mark Scroggs, who is just a wonderful guy. I went to an audition. I can't remember what it was, but the casting director said to me in the room, "I just want to let you know Mark Scroggs pitched you for this role." And I was like, I don't know who that is. He had seen me in a couple of shows. Yeah. He had a client at the time named Yonica Woman. I don't know if you guys know who she is. She's very similar in type to me. She was on a show called Wilfred, and he had seen me in a couple of shows, and when people would call to check on her availability, he would go, "She is not available, but you should look at this actress." And I knew that my agent was considering making some changes. So this blessing, I'd reached out to Mark to say, "Hey, would you want to rep me?" And he was like, "I would love to rep you." And so it was a really nice transition to working together. He had said, "I don't poach clients." He was like, "I would want you to get seen for a role that's right for you, but I was never going to approach you and ask you to come sign with me," which matters to me immensely, the kind of person that my reps are.
Yeah. Wow.
I did have some experiences younger. Maybe things would have been different when I had larger agencies approach me in ways that were wildly uncomfortable for me.
Really?
Yeah, it just didn't work for me. So I do really care, and I have anybody I've ever worked with has been by and large a pretty great person.
That's great. It's nice just to know from someone who's worked as much as you have and really put in a lot of years making an impact in this industry that there are nice people out there.
There are great people at the big companies too.
Yeah.
That was a couple of times the wrong kind of people approached me, I would say. But that's not a comment on the companies, because I know agents there now who are absolutely lovely, be wonderful reps. I just figure, I don't know, you had that naivete that comes with youth where you feel like you have choices.
Yes. Oh yeah.
Probably don't really have. But yeah, it matters to me. My parents were more from the business world, and so it's hugely important to me that my reps or lawyers, publicists, anybody that I know I'm going to be interacting with a lot, we can be really honest with each other. We're not managing each other in either direction. That we can have the real conversations, because this is a tough business.
Yes, ma'am, it is. Was there a time when you said no more co-stars? Was there a time when you said no more one-day guest stars?
It's funny. When I first signed with 3 Arts, one of the first auditions they sent me was for a co-star on New Girl. And I did call them and I was like, "Hey, I feel like I've been at guest star level for, a couple of years." They're like, "Totally. But this casting office doesn't know you." And I did, and I got that part. It was a very small co-star. But the way they shoot that show, or at least the way they did for the 2 days I was there, had a lot of improv. The director of that episode is this phenomenal filmmaker named Lynn Shelton.
Oh, wow.
Lynn. And we just really hit it off. She was just, I don't know if you had a chance to meet her, but
no, I
the
didn't.
most warm, lovely person ever, honestly. They really were like, "Oh my gosh, that was so funny. Do that again. Do this, do this." I remember we were shooting really late into the night, and the showrunners came down to say hi. It was a great experience. None of it ended up in the show, of course, because it was never about my character. Not quite a year later, it was pilot season, and I was starting to get good series regular auditions. I wasn't booking them, but I was getting close and actually in the room, and felt like I was in contention for them. And Fresh Off the Boat was a pilot that year. I got a call with them offering me a recurring role. I had never been offered a recurring role in a network show before. And it was because Lynn Shelton was directing the pilot, and 2 of the executive producers from New Girl were the executive producers, and it was the same casting office.
Wow.
Stories differ. I've heard different stories as to whose idea it was initially, but that group took, I'm told, some footage to the showrunner who liked it. And then they sent that to ABC, who I had been close on things, but I had not gotten, or I had just popped up enough that they felt comfortable enough to say yes to me for a recur. It all happened totally out of my awareness, and I got this call, and I read the pilot. It was the most hilarious, wonderful pilot. I was so excited. It was a role that was very different from me, so it was really cool that they saw me in it. And we shot the pilot. It went to series. We were 2 episodes in. Lynn was directing again, and Lynn was like, hey, so how's your holding deal coming? And I was like, my what? And they offered me a holding deal in a series regular contract if we went to a second season, which we did. And then we made 6 seasons in total. And that's how I got my first series regular, which was a job that went on for 6 years because I went to a co-star audition that initially my ego was like, am I still a co-star? You know, like I was so wrong about it and my reps were so right.
Wow.
And it was an incredibly valuable lesson. I definitely don't look at material like that. And I'm never like, well, and also I realize that especially now in the industry, like we're not too big or too small for anything. You know, it's just great writing is great writing and a fun part is a fun part. But that was an incredible thing to come out of an audition for, I think, what initially was a 2 or 3 line coast.
That is amazing.
Yeah, it was phenomenal.
Wow. I'm sort of blown away by that whole thing.
And it's crazy. It's really crazy. Like, it was amazing. For those people to have cleared the path for me to play that role was just unreal. And they're friends now, you know. Those people changed my life.
Yeah.
They like measurably changed my life and my career. And I'm incredibly grateful to them.
Yeah. That's amazing. I'm blown away. I actually don't know this information, so I'm genuinely asking. Some of it I do, and I'm like asking the question, you know, leading you right there. But did you do 22 episodes straight away? Was it in the first couple seasons?
The first season, I think we were a mid-season show. So I think we came in the winter and did like 15. Then the next seasons we did full years. Yeah, 22 to 24, I think.
Wow. It probably changed everything, right?
Yeah.
You were then sort of booked, busy and blessed for how many months out of the year?
9. It was like a school year, you know.
Whoa.
It was amazing. It was really wonderful. And I was a supporting character, so I still had a life too. I got to have the great stable job, but there were times when an episode was heavy on my character that I would be the first in and the last out, but that was rare. Normally I worked 2 to 4 days a week, had all the fun parts of the job and not a lot of the hard parts. So it was great. And I learned that I loved being a supporting character.
Really?
Yes. I love the schedule of it. The exposure level is exactly right for me personally. I loved playing a character that I don't look like. That was an absolute blessing for me. So it was, it was great. It was a really great experience.
I don't know if I've ever heard anyone say that.
Yeah, well, I also always was very uncomfortable with that idea. And the older I got, the more and more uncomfortable I became about it. And the more I saw friends going through it, or the more I would just work and be on a set and be around someone who was very famous, it just became really obvious to me that that was not for me. And then I was a little bit like, well, what do I do now? Because this is all I know how to do. So Fresh Off the Boat was something I had never considered could happen. They changed the way I looked so much that for the most part, like I didn't lose my anonymity. I mean, when it was on in its heyday, I got recognized a couple times a week. That's not so bad. That's really not so bad. It's not like I got accosted at a grocery store. I had a few scary things happen, nothing too bad. And now that it's off the air, it's like once or twice a month, you know? And so that is comfortable for me. I don't think I would be comfortable with much more. Like, I think it's better for me not to be on buses or billboards, or no one's asking me to be clear. Nobody's pushing this limit and I'm going, no, I'm not ready. But it has landed in a nice place that I realized for me and for my family sits in a good spot for me.
That's amazing. Cancel the bus, Kristen?
Yeah.
No more shit. Oh boy. So 6 seasons is so incredible. I mean, especially in 2024. I feel like it's rare to get even a second season.
Truly.
But as you were prepping to go to the next chapter, how did you prep for that? Did you bring on a publicist at a certain point?
Yes, during the show. At some point during the show, even though ABC had an amazing publicity department, I think they were the ones that told me, because I didn't know what the heck I was doing. They were the ones that were like, you also can get your own publicist if you want. But I felt very taken care of by ABC was our network, and 20th was our studio, both, which were largely run by women, and that might have had something to do with it. And the publicity departments were also largely women. I felt very taken care of by them. And again, I was a supporting character. The show was very much about the Court family. So the vast majority of the publicity opportunities went to them. But yes, I did at some point take on a publicist who I still work with, who's wonderful. And say, Same thing for her, right? Because I'm like, well, here's this limit. Here's what I'm comfortable with and like what I'm not. So it's always finding the right balance, I guess. Enough marketing to hopefully keep my career on track, but not crossing this line that I feel like could be hard to come back from. So if we'd had this conversation at 21, it would have been pretty vague and confusing.
Absolutely.
And I think some of that's just getting older and doing this for a long time.
Yeah, it's the beauty of aging. Yes, absolutely. I think things get better as far as knowing myself, because the more I know myself, the more what aligns with me becomes in focus and everything else sort of fades away.
Same.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it. That's a beautiful way of putting it.
So did you have conversations with your team about like, okay, the show's ending. Here's how we're going to, I don't know. What do people say? Well, here's where we're going to target. Here's where we see you. What was that like?
I think we were talking about, we had these conversations. Movie number one, that would be really scary to me. I did get really close to being a number 2 on a show, and I was very scared. And I loved it though, and I would have done it. I really, really, really liked the showrunners and I liked the script, but it was not my part at the end of the day. So yeah, I'm like, I love a 4 to a 7 on a college and I also had the experience of doing a family sitcom. Mm-hmm. So I was really interested in adult ensemble comedy.
Cool.
So that I was sort of specific about.
Yeah.
And again, that really narrows things down. You know, now you're shooting at a much more narrow target.
Yeah.
And that's still kind of where I am. And that the next job I did was exactly that. But it took some time to find that exact right project, but it was worth it because when I was there shooting that show, I was like, this was exactly what I wanted.
Wow.
This is really what I wanted. And the nature of the business right now is, unfortunately, we didn't get to make a second season of that show, but that show was so good. The material was so wonderful. The cast, so brilliant. I just felt lucky to go to work every day. I felt like I was surrounded by people that were so much better than I was in every way. And it was a wonderful experience.
Wow.
And I'd like to do that again.
I'm so sorry. I should have earlier when I said like barely can get a second season. This is Young Rock you're talking about? Or
no, Young Rock was super fun. That was a lot of the people from Fresh Off the Boat. That was, they were just like, hey, we got this fun little part. You want to come do this? And I had a blast doing that.
Cool.
Yeah. This one was a UK remake of the French show Call My Agent.
Yes.
And that was the one I was talking about.
Got it.
It was just like, I didn't know anybody involved in that project. I loved the part. I loved the writing. Everything about this. We were living in London. It was fabulous. It was a great experience.
That's amazing. How did that project come to you?
An audition. It was just an audition. And I have told this on another podcast. Well, I'll tell the short version. There was another pilot that I had not gotten that I really wanted that went to series. And the day it went to series, I was crying in my bed. I knew the show was good and it's going to get made. And that afternoon, the audition for Call My Agent came in. And what was so memorable, there were a couple things that were memorable about it. The showrunner, who was a writer named John Morton, had sent this character breakdown that was like 4 pages. Really in-depth, beautifully written, really layered character. It had also said in the casting notes, like, you need to go watch his other shows. He has these 2 British sitcoms that he was very well known for. It's important that you watch these because they're very stylized and you have to hit the tempo. And I clicked the link and I watched like 10 minutes of his first show, which was called 2012. And I just couldn't believe what I was seeing. And I ran and I got my husband, who's a writer, just watch this for a second. And then he stopped what he was doing and we sat and watched the rest of the pilot. And we were like, this man is brilliant.
Wow.
I want this job so badly. I had not yet seen the French show. Then I watched the French show, which is magical. And this was, all of the agents in the UK remake were British. There was one American agent and her American assistant. And so this was the American agent that I was auditioning for. And I mean, I wanted it so bad. It was like that dangerous place. That place that's so bad for you. I just loved it. And Dwan Johnson and Rachel Drummond helped me tape it. And it took a couple of weeks. It was a long casting process, but I did end up getting the part. And it was magical. It was totally magical. So wonderful to work in London. It was, again, like I said, the cast was a dream. That showrunner, John Morton, is brilliant. I would kill to work with him again. I hope I get to. It was just a wonderful experience. We had a distribution model. Amazon had the show, I think everywhere but the States. AMC had the show in the States. They didn't get the original title because I think Netflix owned the title, so it ended up changing titles. It came out on a platform called Sundance Now that people didn't know about and didn't have. So it's kind of like didn't happen in the US. Like people had no idea the show even existed or came out. It was a real heartbreak in the end because it's a beautiful show.
Wow.
Such a good show. It still lives on Amazon and who knows how long it'll stay there. But yeah, we're not going to get to make any more, which is heartbreaking.
Such a heartbreak.
Yeah.
I did a series on Sundance Now.
Did you?
Yeah, 2 seasons. I was just recurring. And it was so wonderful, and like, no one knows.
It's just was a time of too many platforms.
Yeah. And now we are in the retraction of that.
Yeah, very much so. And you can see, because you experienced it like I did, a retraction was coming. Like,
yes, absolutely.
There were just too many platforms.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody had, even in the industry, this was a show that everybody in the industry was excited about and knew was coming out. To this day, agents will be like, when's that coming out? I'm like, it came out 2 years ago.
Like, you got Amazon Prime?
I know, I do. I like beg people to watch it because I'm so proud of it.
Yeah.
And it's so good.
It's so relatable. So I love that I so appreciate that you shared feeling the emotion. Like, talk about the highs and lows. I mean, something that you were very close to getting comes out, and I feel all the emotions too. Sometimes people are like, I give myself 24 hours to cry, and then I like force myself back. I'm like, oh God, how do you shut that shit off? You know?
I mean,
I'm grateful that I'm as in touch with my emotions. I'm grateful I fucking want stuff. Mm-hmm. I'm grateful that it hurts because it points me towards, like, it makes me very clear about what I like and what I want to do. We still have to function in the world, but after you put the audition on tape, how did you take care of yourself?
That one was bad. That was a hard one because I knew early on the casting director had reached out to my agent and said, this will be a long process, but please keep us posted on her availability, because I think she said, like, she really understands the tone, which was such a huge note in the audition. And so, of course, my hopes were like so high. And they had already started the show, so I was also I knew who else was cast, and I was just like, that was a really hard one. But I had been through a couple of other really hard ones at that point. I understand that the casting process, let's say it this way, I'm really lucky to know a lot of comedy writers now because of my husband's a writer and a lot of his friends. And I see people go through the casting process a lot from the other side. A lot. And that has been incredibly beneficial and eye-opening for perspective. Because the way it appears to me, casting, let's say with pilots, because that's normally what I'm auditioning for, you're talking about 7 to 15 personalities that are heavily invested in this pilot, from the showrunner. Sometimes there's a co-showrunner. You have a production company. You have a studio. You have a network. These days you have a star, maybe 2 stars. Their managers might be involved. You have a lot of cooks in the kitchen that all have to say yes to the same person. Ooh. There are politics involved. Of course, like anything else in this industry, casting is very... and the most important person, the casting director. Yes. Really understand then that the casting director is trying to manage all of those personalities and get them to agree on the same person. I don't know if actors have any idea how hard the casting director's jobs are. I don't know that I did until getting to see it as often from the other side now. And really, no one in that room knows actors the way the casting director does, right? Like, if you ever talk to a casting director, they would remember a crappy audition I did 15 years ago that I would have long since forgotten. Yeah. You know, like they really know their stuff. That is their whole job. And so they're trying to wrangle all of these personalities. Everybody has, understandably, their opinions of who should be cast in a given role for whatever reason. And you also have to understand from the network and the studio's perspective, they're looking at all of their other shows too. And they want to make sure that their casts for each show look different and interesting. And so they're on another level entirely, whereas the showrunners and producers are here on this role. So there is a lot that goes into it. Yeah. You only usually just need one no to get knocked out, but you need like 20 yeses to get the job. So it's not personal. It is really not personal. It's just a lot of people with opinions. If you are getting these callbacks and if you are testing, you could be playing that role. You're doing your job. You're doing great. Whether you do or don't get it is so above and beyond the performance that you're giving that day. And so I understand that. I've seen it play out 1,000 times, so I can do a pretty good job of reminding myself of that. But it doesn't change if I want a job. I still want the job. You know, if I want something as much as I wanted, Call My Agent, which was eventually called 10%. I wanted that job so much. And so I just had to sit there and go, I know, I got to get these however many yeses I have to get. There's nothing I can do about it. Yeah. I know right now that the showrunner likes me and I know the casting director likes me. And that's enough for now because I've seen the other shows they made and my gosh, do I want to work with these people. Oh. So I just kind of had to sit with that. I also had the experience of getting quite close on a couple that I didn't get, some of which were totally out of my control, had nothing to do with me. One of which I think I just didn't clear network because, to be honest, I don't think I did a very good job at the network test. I don't think I was as strong in that one as the others. But there were people that wanted to hire you. that didn't get to hire you. We forget that. Like if you're pinned for something, that's because someone in that process, probably a couple people in that process, are fighting for you. Now someone else is fighting for the other person who's pinned and someone else is fighting, but somebody's fighting for you at that stage. And if you don't get it, they didn't get to hire you. And they're bummed too, and they're probably going to hire you later.
I love that.
So we don't feel any of that. We don't see any of that. We don't know any of that. You know, I'm old enough now, but I've had enough people say those things to me on set. And I've just experienced it enough, you know, getting close, not getting something, getting a nice email from the showrunner or one of the producers. And they had an experience too. They had a loss too. You know, that's something we have to remember. It's all online now, right? It's all taping. So we don't even have those in-person interactions anymore.
For sure.
Which is a huge bummer, in my opinion. We don't even meet them.
Are they rooting for us? Yeah.
You don't see anybody lean forward while you're doing your scene. You used to know. You're giving an audition and you're like, I'm doing a great job. Now you don't know.
You can still feel it.
Or the opposite, where you're like, I'm going to leave this room and they're going to laugh at me. And that's all gone.
Yeah.
It's all gone now. It's different now.
Yeah. I've never heard anyone say that before. That like when they don't get to cast you, they're bummed too. Someone's rooting for you in there. And they're like, well, I'll be thinking of them and hopefully getting them on my show eventually. It's such a cool perspective.
And in television, if it goes to series, they're going to try to get you in there somewhere.
Yeah, absolutely.
Of course. I'm just feeling really bummed and rejected.
Yeah.
Of course, because that's what it feels like. But I think it's bigger than that. I do think it's bigger than that. The other thing I do, back to your initial question, if it is something I really want and I'm suffering, which have happened on a couple, I will just call my reps and say, hey, this is dumb. I'm totally suffering. Do you happen to know anything you haven't told me? And sometimes they do. Most times they don't. Most of the time they're going to tell me. But sometimes they do. And they're like, yes, I know the tape went to so-and-so, but they haven't watched it yet.
Yes.
Or I know you went through with 3 other women, but I haven't heard anything, so I'm not feeling very good about, I like to sort of be informed about the timeline of things are.
Yeah.
I'm comfortable to make that phone call. Just say like, do you happen to know anything that would ease my anxiety right now?
Yeah.
I try not to make it, but if I need to make it, I do.
I love that because then you're not denying you're feeling all these emotions, but like, actually, I'm not going to like take care of myself with this. I'm just going to sort of suffer through 10%. I totally get that. I love that a lot because we don't have to suffer alone.
No.
And the truth is, it hurts.
Yeah.
This stuff hurts, you know what I mean? We get attached. And I truly feel like physiologically, there's chemicals in our body, chemicals that are released that allow us to feel the highs and lows of the character. And before we know it, like we're connected. And it's not something that we can just sort of like fully, immediately mind over matter it. You know what I mean?
Especially not now because it used to be in the good old days when we would go in the room with casting, it was kind of a workshop, right? You'd get the material, you'd go in, you knew it, but you didn't have to be off book because you were going to work on it together with the casting director or with the producers or with the director. You were going to come in with your take and then find it together. So you had put a certain amount of work into it, which for me, and I imagine you, was already a lot of work. But it is different now in that you have to turn in something that is done. It needs to be so polished. So you've spent a lot of time on it. You have really lived in this person's shoes and you're sending a tape that hopefully can go all the way through the process and it literally shows them this is what it's going to look like on set. So you are invested in a way that is even different from, I think, what it was. Before, it's like you would want it, but also it was pilot season. There was some, I think, psychological distance, whereas now they're very spaced out. There aren't as many. You know you're not getting one tomorrow. And if you really love it, the stakes have changed.
Absolutely. To want is not a bad thing.
Certainly don't want to take desperation into the room. It's just not going to help you.
Right.
You're going to do, or me anyway, I would do a terrible job. I've done it, especially when I was younger, and every role felt like it could change your life. I don't have the time and perspective yet to understand how long the journey is.
We'd mentioned sort of in passing the retraction of the industry that's happening now, and that it was sort of necessary because things were sort of inflated and not getting maybe the care that they deserved, even though it feels like a necessary part of the process. I found it pretty challenging myself. I like sort of sampling, what is it like for this person and this person and this person, so I get a clearer sense of what's going on, just so that I can have more clarity, rather than like, I don't know what's happening, but I'm going to demonize this moment. There are some things that feel less than ideal that are happening right now. So just what is it sort of, like for you, and how have things changed, and how are you managing those changes?
It's, I think, like everyone, that retraction has been difficult. It's been tough, especially for someone who loves to do comedy. I think it's retracted even more than drama has. Plain and simply, it's tough. There's a lot less work. There are a lot of people that would have been considered a different tier that now are wanting to do the kind of job that normally I would have gotten. So I think that's happening to everyone across the board. There's so much less work all over the place that everybody's coming down a level or two because everybody's got to make their living. Sure. And that has been interesting. I've had more situations lately than I have ever had of someone who wants to hire me, trying to hire me and not being able to because they end up having to hire somebody who is like more famous or has a social media presence, which I'm not big on social media, so I'm not helping anybody there. So that's happened a lot more, and I just have had to make peace with that and be patient. I would be completely remiss if I didn't acknowledge the immense privilege of having been on a long-running network show, because that's given me a financial cushion to weather that storm and be able to still hopefully wait for the right job. Without Fresh Off the Boat, that wouldn't be the case. It would be a different situation. So I'm very grateful for that. There's just a lot less that comes in that I read, and I'm also grateful that my reps are being supportive of that right now. I'm not at some level that I think warrants that, but just trying to be selective and go, okay, let's be as patient as we can be to find the right role in the right project and just kind of see where the chips fall in the long run. It's a really tough time. It's a really tough time for everybody in the industry, for directors, for writers, for actors, for gaffers, for makeup artists, hairstylists. There's so much that's happening at one time. We have all of these financial difficulties that came out of the strikes, from the COVID shutdowns, from the retraction of streaming. Any one of those things would have been very detrimental, but all three at the same time were virtually catastrophic. And then in Los Angeles, on top of that, we have production leaving LA. Yeah. So it's been really hard on the ecosystem of this city that was used to having dozens of shows going at the same time. Now, that's going to be beneficial for someone who lives in another marketplace. If you do happen to live in New Orleans or Vancouver or Toronto, there's a lot more shooting in your city than used to. Yeah. And then I think one of the biggest differences that I have struggled with personally is the switch to self-taping. I love working with casting directors, and I love meeting the directors of the project. I love having the tone discussions and finding out where are they in real time with this casting process. What haven't they found yet about this role? Why are they still looking? If it's early in the process and they're fresh out of, just having written it, what are your hopes and dreams for this role? What do you want it to be? If they're late in the process and they're scared and they don't know what they're going to find, okay, what are you missing? What's that quality that hasn't come in here yet? That is totally gone from the process, and I really miss it because I like to have those notes. I like to be able to create it with someone, and I do have my good group of friends that I do my auditions with who are brilliant, but we're just guessing. We're all guessing at what we think fits. I do miss that, especially because the casting directors are some of the smartest, most creative, kind people in this business, and we don't get to see them anymore at all. And that's really weird. Yeah. I find that really weird.
Yeah, they are the loveliest, right?
Yeah, there's so many of them that care. They root so hard for you, and their insight, their up to the moment ideas of what that role should be is such an important part of the process. The breakdown we're getting often is the one from the beginning. It's not necessarily the real time. Sometimes it's exactly they've changed it that morning, but a lot of times it's what they thought it was going to be in the beginning, and maybe it shifted that morning. Maybe that morning they looked at a round of tapes and realized, oh my gosh, we're missing this edgy quality. We just realized it's not on the page. We really want it in this role. Or we just cast so-and-so over here, and she's so sweet. We got to pull some of the sweetness out of this role. There's just so many things that happen so quickly in a casting process. And then we could add those colors to our auditions. And so I would say those are the things that I know it's never coming back, though. I understand that this is where we are, and that it's also very economical in terms of time for them. They can see 100 actors in the amount of time they could have seen 15 before. So there are a lot of advantages to that from their perspective. And I totally accept that this is what it is, and it's probably not going to change. Right. But yeah, it's been different.
Do you ever run into, when self-taping, wondering, okay, they say it's grounded, but this character is written like it just jumps off the page. Yeah. How to sort of find the balance of doing specific character work, but keeping it grounded, especially when they say grounded, and you're like, well, what kind of grounded?
Totally, I know.
Am I grounded, or so-and-so's grounded? Yeah. And how do you sort of come to a peaceful place when sending a self-tape in? Or do you?
If it's comedy, which I think you're specifically asking about comedy, I'll be honest, I just try to send the funniest version of it that I can send. Great. And not that betrays the material, but if I think they're saying grounded, but I know if I elevate this just a touch on me, it's going to be funnier, I'll go ahead and send that. If I think it's really far off of what they're asking for, I will do both. I'll send a really grounded take, and then I'll send something that's just a little, or if I have just an idea for something where I'm like, this is not at all what they're asking for, I'll do what I think they're asking for, and then this other thing If it's comedy, what's funniest on you? Which is different than what's going to be funniest on me or what's going to be funniest on anybody else, you know?
Oh, I love that answer. I love that answer. A client just emailed me and he was like, so I did the Zoom session and they were like, bring it all the way back down. He was like, should I have gone in that way? Should I? And I really led with, no, show them you. And then because you're doing that live thing, allow them to adjust, but don't sort of leave your best take in your shower. You know what I mean?
Especially if you're on Zoom, because that's as close to being in the room as you're going to get anymore. Do the thing that you did that got you that Zoom appointment and let them direct you and let them see that you can take notes. That's so important for the director to know that you can alter what you're doing to fit what they want and need you to do. There's almost nothing more important than that. They have to know they're going to get the performance out of you that they want. Their own job is on the line. So I think that sounds to me like the right way to go in and get a note and then take the note and adjust it.
Rather than like, I should have come in psychically knowing exactly what they wanted and just hit the nail on the head. They say nothing, they just smile and I leave the Zoom.
Yeah, no, that would feel miserable to me. If I didn't get a redirection, I'd be like, I'm probably not getting that job.
Wow.
I mean, normally it's the redirection that gets you the job.
That's such a fantastic way to think about it.
Again, we're kind of losing that in this process, but normally that's the way it would go.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think, look, there's always a discussion to be had around tone with comedy, always.
So what did you take away from our studio, or what did you learn in your time here?
Yes, I remember the specificity of it. I tend to work in a very relationship-based way. The foundation of what I do has to do with the relationship with the other person or people in the scenes. And so it was also great to come here and have this like really specific, clear idea of timing and tempo and pacing. I just found that structure really helpful. And then even perhaps more importantly, I think being in a room full of people that were trying to learn about the business rather than just people that were trying to learn about acting was incredibly valuable, because it is this big, huge industry that you don't know anything about unless you grow up here, which I didn't. And it's such a learning curve to know the difference between a studio and a production company and a network and what they do and how they do it. And it's actually not the biggest industry in the world, but it certainly feels like it when you're on the outside. And so having someone, the teachers like you who know these things, who are going to say, okay, well, this is the audition that you have. This is this casting director, and she likes to work this way. Huge. That was so helpful versus me. Like, I was just looking at the material. I wanted to know the other stuff, but in some ways I didn't know what I didn't know.
Yes.
And then in some ways I knew there was a lot I didn't know. And so it was just great to be around a group of people that were all actively trying to understand this industry better.
Yeah.
Incredibly helpful.
So good. Okay, great. Let's end the podcast the way we do every time. These are the 10 questions made famous by James Lipton on Inside the Actors Studio. Since he is no longer with us, I practiced these when I was in college.
Are you going to do it in his voice?
I'll do my best.
Or his cadence. Just
Chelsey Crisp, what is your favorite word?
Lunch. It's just sort of a luscious sounding word. Lunch.
It is. What is your least favorite word?
Right now, it's stupid, because my toddler has learned it, and it is very commonly said in our household, and we're struggling with how much or how little to react to it in hopes that it will stop being said. But stupid is said a lot.
Oh, what turns you on creatively, spiritually, or emotionally?
A great sense of humor, really. I think just someone who doesn't take themselves too seriously. Life's tough. I think it's good to be able to laugh at ourselves and the things that we're going through.
What turns you off?
I want to say self-seriousness, but it's sort of the inverse. But actually, arrogance is a huge turnoff. I've always had that, like you have your celebrity crushes as a teenager. And I remember I'd read like one interview and somebody would be super arrogant and the crush was gone.
Like, totally. Noah DiCaprio, we're not getting together.
Yeah, that's it for you, dude.
With respect to him.
Sorry.
Yeah.
This isn't going to happen. I'm not a big fan of arrogance.
Got it. What is your favorite curse word?
Asshat. My friend Sarah used to say it all the time in high school, and I thought she made it up. And I don't know if she made it up and it went around the world or if she just heard it somewhere. But it makes me laugh. It diffuses. If you're angry and you say asshat, you're not angry anymore.
Oh my gosh, that's so good.
Yeah,
I love that. What sound or noise do you love?
Obviously, my children laughing. That's what comes to mind first. But I also love the sound of running water, like a fountain or a river or something. Probably because I grew up in the desert. So running water sounds really unique and special to me.
Oh yeah, totally calming.
Very calming.
What sound or noise do you hate?
Nails on a chalkboard. Right?
Yes.
Just, I think, a very basic.
Visceral reaction.
Also, honking in traffic is not great.
Yeah, totally. What profession other than your own would you like to attempt?
Oh, I think I would have been a therapist, if not an actor, because it's really the behavioral side of things that interests me. It's how people tick and how they function together and how they affect each other. And I think that easily could have led me to be a therapist instead of an actor. I think I was just exposed to theater first.
Oh, wow. I think you'd be really good as a therapist. You're a phenomenal actor, so.
Or I could have messed a lot of people up.
Oh, there you go.
I don't know which way would have gone.
What profession would you not like to do?
I'm a cook, which is weird because I love to cook, but like a chef, like a professional chef, that sort of pressure cooker, intense environment, I think would not have been great for me. But I love to cook for my friends and family.
Oh, nice.
But yeah, anything where there's just incredible stress and pressure, I just think life's too short.
I co-sign on that, for sure.
I mean, jobs that are a lot more stressful than a professional chef, but that's okay.
I mean, that is up there.
You know, my real answer is the President of the United States. I can't imagine anything more stressful than being the President of the United States. I would never in a million years want to do that job.
Good. I will not vote for you this time around.
Thank you so much. Yes. I appreciate it. Don't write me in, everybody.
Yeah. If heaven exists, what would you like to hear God say when you arrive at the pearly gates?
Your dad's waiting. That's it. I want to see my dad. Have a beer with him. That's all I want at the end.
Yeah. Beautiful. Thank you so much, Chelsey.
Thank you for having me. This has been a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's been a great chat. I could chat with you for a long time.
I'm very long-winded.
Oh my gosh, I love it. I'm like, more. Yes, thank you.